The sun barely kissed the pavement as it rose over the crumbling streets of Detroit. The world was still asleep, but Ava was wide awake, as always. The cool morning air bit at her face, a constant reminder that warmth was a luxury she couldn't afford. At 16, she had learned that survival wasn't about making it through the day, it was about finding something to hold on to. Ava's feet shuffled against the cracked concrete, the soles of her shoes worn thin from too many miles walked, too many nights spent in the cold. Her backpack, stuffed with what little she had left, hung from her shoulders like a reminder of every broken dream. Her stomach growled louder than the screeching sirens around her, but she ignored it. She had gotten used to the hunger, just like she had gotten used to the quiet humiliation of being invisible to the world around her. Detroit was a city of broken promises, and Ava was one of its many forgotten children. Her mother had always tried to shield her from the harshness, but even she had succumbed to the weight of life's struggles. Ava, with her father long gone and a mother who barely scraped by, was left to navigate the world on her own. Yet, somehow, she found the strength to keep going. Every day, one step at a time. She wasn't thinking about tomorrow. She wasn't even thinking about her next meal. Right now, all she could focus on was getting through the next few minutes. That's when she heard it. A soft whimper. A faint cry for help. Ava froze, her breath catching in her chest. It wasn't a human cry, this was different. Her eyes darted toward the source of the sound, her heart pounding. There, near the side of the road, was a small, scruffy dog, its body curled up in a heap of tangled fur. The poor creature's leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, blood soaking through its fur, and it was trembling uncontrollably. Without a second thought, Ava knelt beside the dog, her hands shaking as she gently lifted its fragile head. It whimpered again, eyes wide with fear, looking up at her in desperate need. Ava's heart swelled with an ache that felt too familiar. She had seen that look before, when her own mother's eyes searched for hope in a world that didn't offer much. "Shoo, it's okay," Ava whispered, her voice soft as she cradled the dog in her arms. She didn't know what to do, but she knew one thing for certain, she wasn't going to leave this poor creature to die alone on the streets like so many others had. Ava reached into her bag, pulling out the last of her water bottle. She offered it to the dog, hoping it would drink. When it didn't, she gently stroked its fur, her fingers trembling. "Please, hang on," she thought. The dog's eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, she wasn't alone in this cold, unforgiving world. They were both survivors. They both understood what it meant to be left behind. As Ava carefully lifted the dog into her arms, she glanced around. There were no shelters nearby. At least, none that could take in a stray without charging fees she didn't have. But there was a small clinic a few blocks away. It wasn't much, but it was the best she could do. But as she began walking toward it, something caught her eye. The sleek, black silhouette of a car pulled up beside her. The engine hummed loudly as the car came to a stop just a few feet away. Ava instinctively stiffened, her heart racing. She hadn't heard the car coming, there was something eerie about the sudden arrival. The tinted window rolled down slowly, revealing the face of a man. Tall. Well-dressed. His suit was sharp enough to cut glass, and his features were hidden by the shadows of his car, but his presence was undeniable. There was something cold about him, something calculating in his gaze. Ava took a step back, clutching the dog closer to her chest. "Is he yours?" The man's voice was low, cool, and oddly distant. It felt like he was examining her, studying her every move. "No," Ava stammered, still unsure of how to react. She tried to hide the dog in her arms, but the man had already noticed. His eyes locked onto the animal, and then, to her surprise, softened, just for a moment. "That's my dog," he said, his tone suddenly more intense. You don't understand what you're holding. Ava blinked in confusion. His dog? She glanced at the small creature in her arms. Its matted fur, its twisted leg, it didn't look like it belonged to anyone, let alone a man dressed in a suit. But before she could speak, the man took a step closer, his gaze shifting from the dog to her face. He studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment, and Ava felt something in his stare, something that made her skin crawl. "I'll take him from here," the man said, his voice firm, his words final. Ava hesitated, instinctively pulling the dog closer. Her heart beat faster, and something deep inside told her to run. To refuse. To keep the dog safe. But the man's presence was imposing, and there was a weight in the air she couldn't ignore. "You don't understand," she said quickly. I can't afford a vet. I'm just trying to get him help." The man's lips curved into a faint smile, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've done enough," he said, before holding out his hand to take the dog from her arms. The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Something about him felt off, like he knew more than he was letting on. What did he mean, "You've done enough"? Ava thought. He reached for the dog, and without thinking, Ava finally surrendered. She let him take the animal from her, feeling the weight of it lift from her arms. She couldn't explain it, but something about this whole interaction made her feel like she was losing control over something much bigger than herself. The man turned to walk toward his car, the dog now cradled in his arms. Before he got in, he glanced over his shoulder and said something that stopped Ava cold. "You've just made a bigger difference than you realize," he said. "And now, I owe you." As the man drove away, Ava stood there, alone on the quiet street. Her thoughts raced. She had no idea who he was. She had no idea what he was offering. But one thing was certain, this wasn't the last time she'd see him. The question now was, why had he shown up, and what did he really want? Just as she thought she'd never see him again, a familiar black car reappeared, this time driving up to her house. But this time, it wasn't just the dog he was after, it was her. The black car disappeared around the corner, and Ava stood still, her mind reeling. The man had taken Champ, the injured dog she had found, cradled like a fragile piece of her own broken heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The air around her felt thick with secrets, like a puzzle with missing pieces, and she was left to wonder what kind of man would drive away with a dog like that, without even a hint of emotion in his eyes. Ava shook her head, trying to push the thoughts aside. She couldn't afford to dwell on it. She had too many other things to worry about, like finding a warm place to sleep tonight, or getting something to eat before the hunger gnawed at her insides again. She turned back, but before she could take another step, the sound of the engine roared to life again. The sleek black car reappeared, rolling down the street slowly, as if it had been waiting for her to move. Ava's pulse quickened. There was no way it could be him again, right? But as the car slowed to a stop in front of her, it was unmistakable. The same tall, imposing man stepped out from the driver's side. His dark suit looked even sharper in the early morning light, and this time, there was a coldness in his eyes that made Ava take a step back. "I thought you might need this." He handed her an envelope, thick and crisp. Ava stared at it, then at him. His words were calm, but there was something unsettling in the way he said them, something that made her instinct scream to run. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A way to repay you," he said, his gaze unwavering. "I'm James Harper. You saved Champ, and now I owe you." Ava looked down at the envelope. The weight of it in her hand felt like an anchor pulling her deeper into something she wasn't prepared for. She didn't want to open it. She didn't want to know what was inside. But she couldn't resist. Slowly, she slid the top open and pulled out a check. Her eyes went wide as she scanned the number, $10,000. She looked up at James, her heart racing. I can't. I didn't do this for money. James's expression softened slightly, but only for a moment. I know. But you've done something far more important than just saving a dog. You've given me something I haven't had in years. A sense of purpose. Ava felt her confusion growing. There was something unsettling about his words, something hidden just beneath the surface. A sense of purpose? She couldn't figure out what he meant. Who was this man? And why did he think she had given him purpose? I don't understand, she said, shaking her head. James stepped closer, his voice lowering, as if sharing a secret. You will. Soon enough. For a moment, the tension between them hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Ava's hands trembled as she held the check, unsure of whether to accept it. She had always been told that people like her, people who had nothing, couldn't afford to trust those who had everything. But here, standing before her, was a man who seemed to offer her the very thing she had spent her entire life searching for, a way out. But was it too good to be true? James watched her closely, almost as if waiting for her to make a decision. He didn't say another word, just stood there, his presence looming over her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Finally, she took a deep breath. I don't need your money. She held out the check, ready to hand it back, but James raised his hand, stopping her. Keep it, he said, his voice firm. There's more to this than just money. And you'll understand that soon enough. Ava's mind was spinning. What was he talking about? What did he mean by soon enough? Was she just a pawn in some game she didn't understand? The more she thought about it, the more questions piled up, and the more uneasy she became. Without saying another word, James turned and got back into his car, the engine purring to life again. Before he closed the door, he glanced over at her, his gaze sharp and knowing. I'll be seeing you again, Ava, he said, his voice colder now, as if he had already decided her future for her. The car sped off into the distance, leaving Ava standing there, the check still clutched in her hand. Her thoughts were a blur, James Harper, the dog, Champ, the money. She had no idea what this man wanted from her, but she knew one thing for sure, she hadn't just saved a dog today. She had unknowingly stepped into a world far bigger than anything she had ever known. Pause for a moment, what would you do if you were in Ava's shoes? Would you accept the money, or would you walk away? Let me know in the comments below. Ava stood in the empty street for a long time, the envelope still clutched tightly in her hands. The check was a lifeline, but it felt like a curse. Everything she had fought for in her life, everything she had built up in the quiet corners of her world, was being threatened by a man she didn't know. She wasn't just being offered money. She was being offered a life she had never imagined. And as the sun climbed higher, Ava knew that life was about to pull her deeper into its grasp. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The man, James Harper, had left her standing there, confused and overwhelmed. She was still clutching the check in her hand, a reminder of everything that didn't add up. Why had he shown up? Why had he singled her out? And more importantly, why had he given her that much money for saving a dog? But the questions only grew as she walked the familiar streets of Detroit, her feet carrying her toward the rundown apartment she called home. Every step felt heavier than the last. Ava hadn't felt so torn in years. The money wasn't just an offer, it was a door, one that led to something beyond her comprehension. Something that had been hidden from her for as long as she could remember. She needed answers. And it seemed James was the only one who could provide them. A few days passed in a haze of confusion. Ava didn't touch the check. She couldn't. There was something about James and his offer that unsettled her. But she had no choice but to confront him again. She needed to understand what was happening, even if it meant risking everything she had left. The phone rang in the dead of night. It was a number she didn't recognize. Ava hesitated, her fingers brushing the screen before answering. "Hello." Her voice was shaky, unsure. "Ava," James's voice came through the line, calm and controlled as always. "We need to talk." Her stomach churned. She hadn't expected this call so soon. She had been hoping for a little more time to prepare, to figure out what she was really getting into. But there was no turning back now. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady but her mind racing. "Meet me tomorrow," he replied, the words simple, but they carried a weight she couldn't ignore. "I'll tell you everything. But not over the phone. We need to meet in person." Ava's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to meet. What could he possibly have to say that could explain all of this? She didn't have much of a choice. Whatever it was, she needed to know. The next day, she found herself standing in front of a glass skyscraper in downtown Detroit. It was a world apart from her own. The building gleamed in the sunlight, towering above everything else. It felt like a different reality, one that Ava had only seen from afar, on television or in the movies. The kind of world she had never imagined herself a part of. She walked inside, unsure of what to expect, her nerves kicking into overdrive. The elevator doors slid open, and she stepped out into a sleek lobby. A receptionist smiled at her, but there was no warmth in it. It felt more like a formality than an invitation. "You're expected," the receptionist said, motioning to the elevators that led further up. Ava didn't know what she had expected, but it wasn't this. She wasn't supposed to be here. She didn't belong here. A few moments later, she was standing outside a pristine office, the name James Harper etched on the door in gold lettering. She raised her hand to knock, but before her knuckles could make contact, the door opened, and there he was. James, looking just as polished and poised as he had the other day. But this time, there was something different in his expression. Something earnest. "Come in, Ava," he said, his voice smooth, yet something about it carried an unspoken weight. Ava hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The office was immaculate, sleek furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. It felt like a place where power was manufactured, where decisions were made that changed the lives of people like her. People who didn't have a say in anything. James motioned to a chair across from his desk, and Ava sat down slowly, still unsure of what was happening. Her heart was pounding in her chest. "I know you're confused," James began, his tone softer than usual. "And I know this feels strange, even impossible. But the truth is, Ava, your life is about to change forever." Ava didn't respond, just waited for him to explain. "I know about your family," James continued. "About your father." Ava's breath caught in her throat. Her father, the man who had been absent from her life since she could remember. She had always wondered about him, but no one ever talked about him. It was like he had never existed at all. Her mother had kept her own secrets, things Ava had always felt but never fully understood. "I've been searching for you," James said, as if reading her thoughts. "For a long time. Your father, he didn't just disappear, Ava. He was taken. And now, I've found you." The room seemed to spin as his words sank in. "Taken?" She tried to make sense of what he was saying, but it didn't add up. "What do you mean?" "My father, he left us. That's what I've been told my whole life." James leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Your father was a part of a family, one that has been hiding from the public eye for years. He was a part of something big, Ava. And you are part of it too. Ava's head was reeling. Her father had been hiding. What did that even mean? And how was she connected to it all? Your father, James continued, was the heir to a legacy you never knew about. A legacy that could change everything for you. The family he came from, the wealth, the influence, it's all waiting for you. Ava shook her head, feeling the weight of his words settle into the pit of her stomach. She couldn't wrap her mind around this. It was too much. Too much to take in all at once. You've been living a lie, Ava, James said softly, almost as if he was trying to make her understand. Everything you thought you knew about your family, about yourself, it's all been kept from you. But now that I've found you, we can make it right. Ava sat back in her chair, her hands shaking. The room seemed to close in around her. She had always believed her life was one of survival, a life built on hardship and struggle. But now, in this room, it felt like the floor beneath her was shifting, like everything she had known was a lie. I don't understand, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible. Why me? Why are you telling me this? James smiled, but it was a smile filled with something unreadable. Because you're the only one who can fix it. You're the missing piece, Ava. And now that I've found you, everything is about to change. Pause and reflect. What would you do if you suddenly learned everything you knew about your life was a lie? Would you take the leap, or would you run? Let me know in the comments below. Ava stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on her. Her heart was racing, her thoughts scattered. She didn't know what to believe, but one thing was clear, her life was no longer her own. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Ava's mind raced as she left James's office. The world around her felt like it was shifting, like the ground beneath her was no longer solid. She had come to the city for one reason, survival. But now, her life had become something else entirely. It wasn't just about scraping by anymore. Now, she was entangled in something she couldn't escape, something that had been hidden from her for years. As she stepped into the elevator and descended back to the street level, her heart beat in her throat. She couldn't stop thinking about what James had said. Your father is part of something bigger. The words echoed in her mind, spinning around, making everything she thought she knew about herself feel like a lie. The heir to a legacy. A family hidden away. Her father hadn't just disappeared, he had been taken, kept away from her. Why? What had her mother kept from her all these years? Ava had always been told he left them, that he was just another deadbeat who couldn't be bothered to stick around. But what if that wasn't true? What if everything she had been told about her family was a lie? She had to know. She needed answers. The car ride back to her apartment was a blur. Her thoughts were consumed by James's words. Who was this man who seemed to know everything about her, yet nothing at all about her life? Why had he sought her out, and what did he want from her? She had already made a promise to herself that she wouldn't be used again. But now, after everything that had been revealed, Ava didn't know what to trust anymore. When she got home, the small apartment felt suffocating. She paced back and forth, trying to make sense of it all. The knock on her door came without warning. Ava froze. No one ever knocked on her door. She hadn't expected visitors. With a sinking feeling in her stomach, she slowly walked over and opened it. To her surprise, it wasn't James. It was someone else, someone familiar, but unexpected. It was Jasmine, her best friend from the neighborhood, standing in the doorway with a look of concern on her face. Ava, Jasmine said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on? Ava sighed, rubbing her temples. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Jasmine raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. Try me. Ava hesitated before sitting down, the weight of everything pressing on her chest. I met someone today, a man named James Harper. He says my dad didn't just leave us. He was taken. And he says I'm part of some legacy. A family that's been hidden from me my whole life. Jasmine blinked, clearly shocked, but she didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, processing Ava's words. I don't know what to think, Ava continued, the exhaustion in her voice creeping in. I always thought I was just nobody. Just another girl trying to survive. But now I feel like everything is a lie. I don't know who I am anymore. Jasmine sat down next to Ava, her eyes soft with understanding. Ava, I get it. You've been through a lot. But do you think maybe, just maybe, this could be something good for you? I mean, if what he's saying is true, then you have a chance at something better. Something more than all this, she gestured around the small, cramped apartment. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Ava shook her head, fighting the wave of doubt and fear that threatened to overwhelm her. I don't know if I can trust him. I don't know what he wants from me. What if it's just another way for me to be used, like everyone else in my life? Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes intense. But what if it's not? What if this is your chance to find out who you really are, where you come from? You don't have to be a part of whatever James's family has planned. But you owe it to yourself to find out the truth. And, Ava, you deserve to know. Ava's chest tightened. The idea of deserving anything was a foreign thought. She had always fought for survival, never considering she might be entitled to anything beyond the bare minimum. But the words Jasmine spoke resonated within her. What if this was her chance? Just then, Ava's phone buzzed, breaking the heavy silence. She glanced at the screen, James Harper. With a deep breath, she answered. Hello. Ava, James's voice was steady, but there was something in it that made her stomach churn. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to see you again. Tonight. Ava's pulse quickened. What is it? Why tonight? I need to explain everything to you. This isn't just about your father anymore. There's more at stake than you can imagine. Please, come meet me. The urgency in his tone sent a chill down her spine. What was he really asking her to do? Ava glanced at Jasmine, who was watching her closely. She nodded, even though Ava didn't feel ready. Okay, she said, voice trembling slightly. I'll be there. Pause and think, what would you do if you were in Ava's shoes? Would you walk into a world you don't understand? Would you trust James? Tell me in the comments below. As she ended the call, Ava stood up, her knees feeling weak. She had no idea what was waiting for her, but one thing was certain, her life was no longer hers to control. And yet, some small part of her, something she couldn't explain, felt a strange pull toward whatever James was offering. This was it. There was no turning back now. The night felt colder than it had any right to be. Ava stood at the entrance of the building, her breath fogging in the air, a heavy weight pressing against her chest. She had been standing there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the glowing lights of the high-rise that had become a symbol of everything she feared and everything she craved. The world of James Harper was nothing like the world she knew, nothing like the concrete streets of Detroit, the apartment she called home, or the fight for survival that was a daily routine. This world was shiny, sleek, and cold, filled with people who had power, control, and secrets. The only thing that tied her to it now was Champ, the dog she had rescued, and James himself, whose motive still felt like a riddle she couldn't solve. The elevator doors slid open, and she stepped inside, the faint hum of the machinery sounding like a heartbeat. As it ascended, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Was she walking into a trap? Or was this the moment when everything changed, when she finally learned the truth about who she really was? She hadn't spoken to Jasmine since the phone call. Her friend had encouraged her to go, but Ava still didn't know if she could trust James. He had said all the right things, promised her answers, but had he been honest with her? Or was this just another game, a game where she was the pawn? The elevator doors opened, and Ava stepped into the lavish office floor. James was already there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city, his back to her. He was wearing the same sharp suit, but tonight, there was an air of urgency about him that made his usual composure feel fragile. "Ava," he said, turning to face her as she walked in. His eyes held something more tonight, something deeper. Was it regret? Was it guilt? Or was it something else altogether? "You came," he said, his voice soft. "I wasn't sure you would." Ava hesitated, standing just a few feet away from him, unsure of what to say. She could feel the weight of his words, the tension that lay beneath the surface of his calm exterior. "What is this about, James?" she asked, her voice shaky despite her attempts to stay composed. "You keep telling me that my life is tied to something I don't understand. You say I'm part of a family I don't even know. But why me? What do you want from me?" James didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly to his desk, retrieving a folder that had been sitting there since she entered. He opened it, and Ava's heart skipped a beat. Inside the folder was a photograph. A photograph of a man she didn't recognize. "That's my father," she said quietly, even though she knew the answer. "But, why is he here?" James looked at her with a somber expression. "That man is your father, yes. But you didn't just inherit his looks. You inherited his legacy." Ava's mind raced. What does that mean? What legacy? What kind of family am I a part of? James stepped closer, the tension between them thickening. "Ava, your father wasn't just anyone. He was a key player in a legacy that has shaped the future of this country. You don't even know what he was involved in, what your family was involved in." He paused, watching her carefully. "But now, the legacy is yours." Her head was spinning. "I don't understand any of this. What are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that your father didn't leave you. He didn't abandon you. He was taken, and when he was, everything he had, everything he built, was meant for you." Ava took a step back, the pieces starting to fall into place, but only making the puzzle more complicated. Her father had been taken. All this time, she had been told he just walked away, and now she was learning that wasn't the truth. What kind of world was this? James continued, his voice softer now. "Your family's wealth, power, influence, it's all yours. The question is, do you want it?" The question hung in the air, an ultimatum wrapped in velvet. Ava could feel the weight of it pressing on her chest. She had never been given a choice like this. She had always fought to survive, scraping together what little she could. But this was a chance at something she had never dreamed of. The life she had always wanted, the life she had longed for, was being handed to her. But there was a catch. There always was. "Why me?" she whispered, the doubt rising in her voice. "Why now? Why didn't you tell me all this sooner?" James hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "Because, Ava, the family you're part of isn't just about wealth and power. It's about something darker. Something dangerous. And I needed to know if you were strong enough to handle it. I needed to know if you could rise above the lies, above the pain, and take what's yours." Her heart raced. What kind of power was he talking about? What was she really inheriting? James wasn't just offering her a future, he was offering her a seat at a table she didn't even understand. A table that could tear her apart or give her everything she had ever wanted. Ava felt her hands tremble as she looked at the man before her, the man who had walked into her life with promises and lies, with secrets she wasn't sure she was ready to know. But she couldn't walk away. She couldn't go back to the way things were. The question now was she ready for the truth? Was she ready to claim the legacy that James was offering her? Pause for a moment. Would you take the chance, or would you walk away from everything you've known? Would you claim what's yours or stay in the shadows? Let me know in the comments below. As Ava stood there, the weight of the decision pressing on her, she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Whatever came next, whatever the future held, she would never be the same again. She had crossed the line, and now she had to live with the consequences. The night air felt different now, heavier with every breath Ava took. The weight of James's words, "You've inherited the legacy. You're part of a family bigger than you ever imagined," kept spinning in her mind. She had tried to push it all away, to walk away from the door James had opened, but she couldn't. It was like he had given her the key to a world she had never known, and now, the door was cracked wide open, beckoning her inside. The money, the promises, the strange pull she felt to something that wasn't her life, all of it made her question everything she had fought for. Was this what her father had wanted for her? Had he planned for her to take his place, to join a family tied to wealth and power, to secrets darker than anything she had ever known? And what if she wasn't ready for it? What if she wasn't strong enough? The doubt gnawed at her. She had never asked for any of this. She had never asked for Champ, for James, for the life he was offering her. It wasn't what she wanted. Or was it? Her mind raced as she sat on the edge of her bed, the envelope with the check still unopened on the small, battered table beside her. The money could change everything. She could leave. She could start fresh, find a new life away from this madness. But the reality hit her like a punch to the gut. She couldn't run anymore. She couldn't ignore the fact that she had inherited this legacy, whether she wanted to or not. And whatever James had been hiding, it was connected to her now. It wasn't something she could walk away from. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Ava froze. She hadn't been expecting anyone. No one came to visit her here, not unless they had something to take. The knock came again, louder this time. Ava stood up, her legs stiff, heart racing. She glanced at the envelope again, wondering if James had sent someone after her, if this was some kind of test, some way to make her prove her loyalty. She walked slowly to the door, her hand shaking as she reached for the handle. The last time she had opened this door, her life had shifted. She couldn't imagine what was waiting on the other side. When she opened it, it wasn't James. It was Jasmine. Ava let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Jasmine stood there, her face pale, eyes wide with concern. Her usual smile was nowhere to be found. "What's going on?" Ava asked, her voice thick with confusion. Jasmine stepped inside without waiting for permission, her eyes scanning the room before landing on Ava. "I tried to call you. I've been worried. You haven't been answering." Ava shrugged, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened. "I've been thinking." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Thinking about what?" "About him," Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About James. About my father. And about everything I'm supposed to do now that I know the truth." Jasmine sighed and sat down on the bed beside Ava. "Ava, listen to me. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to figure this all out in one night." Ava felt a lump form in her throat. Alone. That was the word that had defined her entire life. And now, here she was, standing on the edge of a world she didn't even understand, with no one to guide her through it. I can't just forget what I've learned, Ava said, her voice shaky. I can't pretend like it doesn't matter. I know, Jasmine replied softly. But maybe you're trying to carry everything all at once. Maybe you don't need to make a decision tonight. Maybe you need to give yourself time to breathe. Ava shook her head. Time to breathe? Jasmine, everything's changing. And I don't know if I can handle it. You don't have to decide everything right now, Jasmine said, placing a reassuring hand on Ava's. You have time. The world isn't going anywhere, and neither is James. Whatever this is, it's big, and it's scary. But you're strong. You always have been. Don't let him make you think you have to do this alone. Ava looked at her best friend, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Jasmine had always been there, a steady force in the storm that had been Ava's life. But this was different. James's world was one Ava didn't understand. The power, the secrets, the promises, it was all too much. But Jasmine was right. Ava didn't have to make all the decisions tonight. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to take a breath. The door to the apartment suddenly burst open. Ava's heart leapt into her throat. Before she could react, James walked in. His presence filled the room like a shadow, his dark suit contrasting sharply against the small, dimly lit apartment. The tension in the room thickened as he stood there, not saying a word, just watching her. Ava's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected him to show up here, not like this. What's going on? Jasmine asked, standing up and facing James. She seemed unsettled by his sudden appearance. James looked from Jasmine to Ava, his face unreadable. I'm here because I need to explain myself. Ava felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't expected him to show up at all, let alone like this, demanding something from her, as if she owed him an explanation. Explain what? Ava asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. James stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. Everything. You have to understand that this isn't just about your family's wealth. It's about your future, Ava. And if you don't accept your place in this, you'll lose more than just money. You'll lose everything. His words hit her like a punch. She had never felt so exposed, so trapped. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. She didn't know what to do, didn't know who to trust. Pause for a moment. If you were Ava, what would you do? Would you step into a world of power and secrets, or would you walk away? Let me know in the comments below. The weight of his words hung in the air. Ava's breath caught in her throat as she stood there, caught between two worlds, neither of which felt like they could be her own. The decision wasn't just about money or power, it was about her identity, about who she was and what she was willing to become. She wasn't sure if she could take that step. But she knew she couldn't stay here forever. Ava couldn't breathe. The tension in the room was unbearable. James's words echoed in her mind, if you don't accept your place in this, you'll lose more than just money. You'll lose everything. It felt like the walls were closing in, suffocating her with every passing second. She turned her gaze toward Jasmine, who stood frozen, clearly unsettled by the sudden appearance of the man who had turned Ava's world upside down. James stood just a few feet away, his cold eyes watching her, as if waiting for her to make a choice. But what choice was there? Could she really step into a world so unfamiliar, so full of power and secrets, just because he said so? Are you ready to make the right decision? James asked, his voice unwavering. Because there's no going back once you do. Ava's heart hammered in her chest. She had been running from this moment for days, ever since she had met him, the billionaire who had pulled her into a world of lies, power, and darkness. But the more she tried to ignore it, the more it called to her. Jasmine stepped forward, sensing the overwhelming weight on Ava's shoulders. "James," she said, her voice calm but firm. "What exactly are you asking her to do? What are you offering her?" James's eyes flicked to Jasmine for the first time. A brief flash of irritation crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with a cold smile. "I'm offering her a place in a family that's been hidden for too long. A family that controls far more than just wealth. A legacy that has the power to change everything." Ava turned to Jasmine, her voice barely a whisper. "What do I do? I don't know what to believe anymore." Jasmine's hand landed gently on Ava's shoulder. "You don't have to make this decision now. You can take your time. Don't let him rush you into anything." Ava nodded, grateful for the support, but the reality of the situation was inescapable. She wasn't sure if she could afford the luxury of time anymore. The path ahead of her was hazy, full of fog and uncertainty, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized something: her life had never been in her hands to begin with. For years, she had fought to survive, but survival wasn't enough anymore. She wanted more. She wanted to know who she really was, where she truly came from. James had given her a glimpse of that, but at what cost? She turned back to him. "I want to understand," she said, her voice steadier now. "I need to know everything. What is this family, and why are you doing this?" James studied her for a moment, his gaze narrowing as if weighing her words. Slowly, he walked across the room and picked up a glass from his desk, his fingers lingering on the edges before he spoke. "It's not just about your father," James said quietly. "It's about what he built. What he created, and what's waiting for you if you step into your place. Your family wasn't just a legacy of wealth, it was a legacy of power. Your father was involved in something far greater than anything you can imagine. And now, that power belongs to you." Ava took a step back, her mind racing. "Power? What do you mean? I don't understand." James turned toward her, his eyes piercing. "You've been living in the shadows your whole life, Ava. But there's more at stake here than you think. You're a part of something much bigger than just yourself. Your family's empire didn't just grow from money, it grew from influence. From control. And you, Ava, you're the missing link. The final piece." Ava's chest tightened. The more James spoke, the more it felt like the ground beneath her was crumbling, leaving her nowhere to stand. "You're telling me that I am supposed to take all of this on? That I'm supposed to inherit a legacy I didn't even ask for?" "You're not inheriting something that was handed to you, Ava," James replied, his voice colder now. "You've earned it. The bloodlines, the struggle, it's all led to this moment. You've been chosen." Ava shook her head, her mind spinning with confusion and fear. "But I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for any of this. I was just trying to survive." "And that's exactly why it's you," James said, his tone softening for a moment. "You're different from the others. You understand what it means to fight. To survive. And that's what makes you stronger than anyone else." Ava's breath caught in her throat. Survival. She had spent her whole life struggling to survive, fighting against the odds, against the world. But this? This wasn't just survival anymore. This was about power. The kind of power that changed lives, that changed destinies. And she wasn't sure if she could handle it. Pause and think, what would you do if you were Ava? Would you accept your place in a legacy you never wanted, or would you walk away from it all? Let me know in the comments below. The silence between them stretched, and for a moment, Ava thought she might suffocate under the weight of it all. Her past, her present, and her future, all of it hung in the balance. She wanted to run, to escape this tangled mess of power and secrets, but she knew she couldn't. She had already crossed the line. I need to think about this, Ava said finally, her voice firm despite the swirling uncertainty in her chest. James stared at her for a long time before nodding. Take all the time you need, Ava. But remember, time is a luxury you don't have. The moment you step into this world, there's no going back. Everything changes. Ava nodded silently, watching him walk toward the door. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind whirling with the implications of his words. Everything changes. James paused just before he left, turning to give her one last look. I'll be waiting. As the door clicked shut behind him, Ava stood there, alone in the room, the weight of her decision heavier than ever before.